Hi, I'm Wanhee, and if you're like me, you love food. A bit too much. You like this and this and this, and when you start, you can't stop. Afterwards, you feel guilty, sometimes even shameful, because you failed your diet and ruined all the progress. In this video, we're gonna go through the 8 things you can do to stop yourself from devouring everything in sight. Let's get into it. Have you ever had a friend where you sit across from them, you've gone out, you're having dinner, and then their whole eyesight is just like literally fixated on the food and they're just chugging it down like Jean Valjean out of prison? He doesn't have time to look up, listen to your story, listen to what you're saying. He's just kind of just munching, going crazy. Not only is that just bad etiquette and not good to look at, it's actually what's causing you to eat way too much. What happens when you eat is there's a cheeky hormone called leptin, which comes from your fat cells, and the leptin goes up to your brain and goes, bro, that's enough food for you, let's go use that energy. Now that cycle takes time, but it cannot activate if you're just eating so fast before the leptin can hit. So what happens? You just end up eating way too much. Some of you older OG fans will know I used to make these mukbang videos and attach it to the end of my normal videos like this, where I would just be casually eating my lunch and then I'd be talking about some random question I got from you guys or like some fitness topic as I was eating. And what happened was, because I'm going slowly, I actually end up eating less and even not being able to finish the bloody salad bowl. So get into this habit. Now, if you're someone that just blacks out when they see food, this is going to take longer. But for most people, if you have this awareness, like you catch yourself going super caveman on it, take a deep breather and just actively start a conversation and just slow it down consciously. Next, if you're someone that eats a lot, then what you want is high volume, low calorie. And the typical example is salads. If you eat huge salad bowls, unless they're drenched in sugar salad dressing, which actually a lot of salads are, what you can actually do is if you make a homemade salad, you can make a lot of volume that doesn't add up to huge amount of calories. So you can eat and eat and eat, but it doesn't finish. What are you doing? You're actually doing the same thing where as you eat, because it's so high volume and so much to get through, eventually the leptin signaling reaches the brain and you can actually be full. You can actually have the chance to feel satiety. Whereas if you didn't do that and you went for like brownies and ramen and these dense fried carby foods, by the time you've even eaten that volume, it's almost like you've eaten just huge amounts because it's so calorically dense. You keep things high volume, low calorie, like salad bowls, rather than low volume, high calorie. Next, you want to prioritize protein and fats in your diet. This doesn't mean don't have carbs, but when you have carbs, because it's glucose, because it's sugar, it spikes the insulin, and insulin is another agent that stops that leptin signaling, telling our brain that we're full. When you have rice, pasta, brownies, pizza, pastries, you feel like you can go forever. You end up eating so much. Not only are they calorically dense, they stop this satiety signaling, so you end up eating too much. Have you ever binge eaten a really good steak? There comes a point when you start eating good steak where you go, that's enough, and you stop because it doesn't trigger that insulin leptin block sequence, so you actually get full, feel full, and you stop. On top of that, protein is really healthy, fat is really healthy for your hormonal balance, so you want to make them the main characters of your meals and have the carbs as like your little treat, as like the little sidekicks. Next, don't wait till you're starving. I'm gonna make this point by referring to how I improved my sleep. The way I improve my sleep is not what all these sleep influencers talk about, you know, like having magnesium and chamomile tea and all this kind of stuff. Of course they help, but the main bloody thing to improve your sleep is to sleep and wake up at the same time. This is the biggest leverage thing you can do. Sleep and wake up at the same time. And the biggest proof of this is that when you get jet lagged, you can't fix your sleep in one day, right? So you need to have a set time when you fall asleep and wake up. It's the same thing with eating. Have a set time where you eat lunch, dinner. Of course, social engagements, different situations, work goes over. Okay, it can shift back forth. You have the flexibility. But generally speaking, you should have those systems in place so that you fall back to the level of your systems. If you don't do that, and if you start waiting for that meal too much, you enter the ravenous zone, not the peckish, kind of hungry zone, I should eat zone, but the ravenous, I could eat 2 cows zone. And this is when you end up eating too much, because you enter that super hungry zone and you start craving it. And when you see the food, you go into caveman mode and you absolutely binge it. Who's been there? I've been there, you've been there. All right, so don't leave the meals until you're starving. Instead, have set meal times and even set meals that you turn to. Next, get yourself a 1 liter water bottle. If you're someone that works from home, get yourself a 2 liter water bottle, because that's going to help you drink more throughout the day. That's the best tip I have for someone who wants to drink more water. But why does drinking more water make me not eat too much? It's kind of obvious, right? Like there's this weird diet tip in Korea where they say, don't drink too much water if the dinner is going to be really nice, because then your stomach's going to be full with water and you won't be able to enjoy the nice food. You inverse that. If you don't want to eat way too much at dinner, keep yourself hydrated so you don't have these weird hunger signals that are actually dehydration signals. And also drink a lot more water, because then your belly will actually feel more full, so you won't eat as much. But instead of just drinking like pints of water before dinner, which by the way actually can be quite effective, I just like to say stay hydrated, drink 2, 3, 4 liters every day. And if you get into that habit, then it's going to be much better for leveling out those cravings and hunger signals. Next, insulin and cortisol are the 2 hormones that are most likely to make you binge eat. So what does that mean? You don't want to be having too much sugar and you don't want to be having too much stress. That's now making sense, right? If you have too much sugar, your brain goes into, okay, there's another stomach for the dessert. You start overeating. And when you have too much stress, what do? You reach for a fridge to forget it. Next, when you do heavy weights, more strength-based training rather than the sweaty training, this is actually going to cause less hunger spikes than running, jiu-jitsu, football, where you really exert yourself a lot. And you might be like, why? Surely after a gym session, I get hungry too. I get hungry too. And you are right. After a really heavy gym session, you do get super hungry as well. But it's not as bad as if you did an hour of football or an hour of jiu-jitsu. Now, if you're a hybrid athlete, if you've done these 2 things, you'll actually agree with me, because things that increase your heart rate a lot and you're sweating a lot, what's happening there? You're raises your heart rate, raises the cortisol, because your muscles are going through a lot of stress. You know, when you get tired, when you're doing running and jiu-jitsu and things like this, lactic acid builds up in your muscles. This is stress. It's the same as stress. Cortisol spikes, and again, that increases your blood sugar, increases your insulin, blocks the leptin. When you eat after a big training session, you're actually super ravenous. So instead of training HIIT, try weights instead. The next and final point, and if you didn't expect it, yes, it is to do with the mindset, and it's to ask which black hole you're trying to fill. I know this because I've been doing this stressful eating a lot. And when you go into stressful eating, where you eat because of your stress or because you're emotionally feeling anxious, you never reach for something healthy. You always reach for the bad food. Let's say you're like stressed and you just don't want to like feel this emotion. And you're like, oh, you know, I just need to get a dopamine hit, get a sugar hit. I'm just going to go hit the fridge. You open the fridge, there's a salad and then there's a brownie. Which one are you going to reach for? You're always going to go for the brownie. You're always going to go for the unhealthy, more dopamine inducing, sugary dessert option. If you've actually caught yourself in that moment, which I did, I explain it in this video, fuck it moment, you're not actually hungry. Your body doesn't actually need food. It's not a desire for energy because your body lacks energy. It's actually an emotional desire, some lack inside of you that you're trying to compensate for with food. You're actually trying to escape this feeling, escape this moment that is uncomfortable with something that's gonna dull your mind, like sugar, because it just gives you that dopamine hit, or smoking, or drugs, or whatever the hell that you use as an addictive mechanism to overcome the black hole that you have inside you. Obviously, we're not gonna go into therapy and find out which black hole you are, but just open yourself up to this idea that you're trying to fill something inside that is not anything to do with energy or food or calories. In Korea, we like to say a washing basin with a hole in the middle. You keep putting food in it, but unless you know that hole, what's causing that hole, the food's just gonna fall right through. It's never getting filled, and whatever food you put in it, you never feel full. So you just keep eating brownies, never goes away. Usually, if you're living a more fulfilled life, more aligned with your purpose, and you're a positive person surrounded by positive people who love you, and you go to therapy, you're working on yourself, you're improving yourself, you join my coaching community, you're around me, you're getting coaching, all of these things are gonna help you become more whole and therefore crave food less. So with all these tips, I hope you can get a handle on the eating too much situation. Thanks for watching. See you next week. Bye-bye.